Hello, hello. Welcome back to Loki's Library. And if you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina. On Sundays, I do this thing called Books and Booze, where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. This month, we are taking a look at political thought, starting with this week's book, The Vision of the Anointed, Self-Congratulations as a Basis for Social Policy by Thomas Sowell. The accompanying cocktail is a tunnel vision, which is 2 ounces of basil infused blanc vermouth. You have to infuse it yourself. You're not going to actually find that you buy the blanc vermouth. You put it in a jar with some basil leaves. You let it soak overnight. Half ounce of pear liqueur, half ounce of lime juice, half ounce of simple syrup, 2 dashes of absinthe, and soda water. So let's do this. Not everyone knows who Thomas Sowell is. This is Thomas Sowell. There was a picture up here, so you know who I'm referencing. He is one of the premier economists, economic historians, and social theorists to come out of the 20th century. He's right up there with Milton Friedman, Friedrich Hayek, Walter E. Williams, Henry Hazlitt. That's who I was thinking of. Henry Hazlitt is interesting because he was, self-taught, and Thomas Sowell went through college for this, but I went through college before it turned completely shit show. I really hope I have enough. I was almost out of vermouth. I almost bought more, but I was like, no, I got enough. Oh, I don't have enough. Well, we're just going to make do. We're going to make do is what we're going to do. I thought I had enough. Did not have enough. About a ½ ounce shy. Oh well. I'll make it work. It'll just be slightly less vermouthy, which is fine because vermouth is not my favorite anyways. ½ ounce of everything else, except for the absinthe. So, his career starts way back in the 1960s. Now, he was born in, I think, 1930, so he's 96 years old, or going to be 96 this year. He cut his teeth pre-degree in Washington, D.C., earning his doctorate in economics in Illinois, and then went on to teach at Stanford. So it should come as no surprise that by the time he published this week's book in 1995, the prose is fairly dripping with disdain for the Anointed. He had been around the Anointed his entire working and professional and career and educational career, and has had just about enough of their bullshit. It's dripping with disdain, and I am here for it. God, it was fun to read. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I loved the sarcasm that just came off of every page. It was wonderful. ½ ounce of simple syrup. ½ ounce of lime. Lime, just simple syrup, absinthe. Yes, we're good. We're good. We're here. So, for those of you who don't know, Thomas Sowell comes down right of center. We're going to put it that way. Which, I mean, as far as the Anointed go, anything, right of Mao Zedong is, too far right, is extreme right. But, yeah, I don't think he really cares about that. In the eyes of the Anointed, this makes him very, very benighted. And that is the language he uses in the book. Our political overlords who believe in their own vision and are legends in their own mind are the Anointed. And those of us who don't fall in line with their vision are benighted. He refers to everything like that in the book. I'm going to do my best to follow right in line with that. I said 2 dashes of absinthe. Yes, got everything else. Yes. 2 dashes. How am I going to do a dash? I don't have a dasher thing here. There you go. That's enough. I don't like absinthe, so I'm just going to... 2 little tiny slugs is going to be 2 dashes for me. So what do the Anointed believe that the rest of us fail to grasp? Well, first off, those of us who don't see things their way are guilty of sin. Like absolute mortal sin. How dare you think for yourself? I think Hillary Clinton summed it up nicely during her presidential bid.
You could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
She actually used her outside voice, and that is exactly what they think of us. Benighted sinners living in a deplorable state of darkness for the crime of not seeing. Let me shake this up. All of that, and then you basically top it off with the soda water. Don't shake the soda water, it's carbonated. If you shake it, it will explode. Just voice of wisdom here. So Sowell, after pointing out that we're all benighted sinners, spells out the formula that the Anointed use. And once you see it, you can't not see it. Stage 1 is the crisis. Some situation pops up that the Anointed determine they have the solution for. Stage 2 is the solution. The Anointed propose their solution to anyone who disagrees or protests that the solution is in some way flawed and will lead to Z outcome, is dismissed as being absurd, simplistic, or dishonest. Stage 3 is the results. The solution is implemented just as the Anointed outlined, leading to the exact results the benighted said would happen. And That's somehow the benighted's fault, by the way, because they just didn't believe enough. Stage 4 is the response. Those who say, I told you so, are again dismissed as simplistic because they ignore the complexities involved. And then the goalpost is shifted so that the anointed can claim a victory. Should sound all very, very alarmingly familiar. Forgot to put my basil in as garnish. It's actually not bad. The soda water is automatically going to water it down, for lack of a better way of describing it. But it's not bad. It's got a slightly sweet taste. The absinthe is not overwhelming. I always worry about that because wormwood is a very particular flavor. It's very strong flavor, but it's not too bad. So yeah, all of that sounds familiar, right? I remember about 6 years ago, we were all told 2 weeks to flatten the curve, masks, endless vaccination schedules. And then we started seeing headlines like this, XYZ, all the bad shit that the benighted said would happen, happened. We all just didn't understand the complexities involved. All sounds really familiar. I think I'm still bitter and angry about that. That's just recent history, right? Remember, the facts and statistics that Sowell uses come from 1995, the war on poverty, sex education, and criminal justice, 3 particular bugaboos that he singled out for coverage, although he could have gone into like climate change and a whole bunch of other things, right? He includes all the grisly details of the backlash of each of these. I mean, prior to Johnson's declaring the war on poverty, poverty had in fact been on a 10-year decline. Like for real, if you look at the year 1950 to 1960, poverty was on a it wasn't just on a downhill slope. They were on skis, man, and it was going straight to the bottom. Then Johnson comes along, declares a war on poverty, and the poverty rates skyrocketed and have continued to increase every decade ever since. Poverty is winning the war on poverty, just like drugs won the war on drugs. The statistics for sex education and criminal justice were just as dismal. Once we started outsourcing sex education to the schools, right? It used to be something that your parents would talk to you about it at home. Teen pregnancy and STD rates skyrocketed. All right. It's like they weren't on downhill skis. They were on the ski lift to the top of the hill at that point with, boosters behind them. It's just off the charts. His criminal justice breakdown was kind of the other side of the coin for me when he talks about the failure of the Warren courts, Miranda v. Arizona. I think it was Mapp v. Ohio, and there was the third one that was the really big one to come out of the Warren courts. Crime went up. Criminals walked. Now, earlier this year, I read, the 3 books on the importance of Miranda. I don't remember, but I'll throw them up here and links to them and all that. I read many of the books highlighting the importance of Miranda and, asking for an attorney if you find yourself under arrest for anything. And this remains true. All right. The problem of a corrupt and or lazy cop strong-arming innocents into prison is a completely separate problem from experienced criminals now being made aware of their right to an attorney. Miranda, however, is just the tip of the iceberg. The real problem is activist judges who have been rewriting the laws from the bench since FDR's handpicked appointees greenlit all of his New Deal legislation. And it has only gotten worse from there. He points out that there was one judge, I don't remember her name, I think it was Rose, but I'm not going to swear to that, in California, because of course it's always in California, who basically overturned every single death penalty case that came before her. Every single one of them, for the most frivolous of reasons, using her own political agenda to rewrite laws from the bench. He includes information on a program out of California, because of course something this stupid could only come out of California, the Alternatives to Incarceration program, which I had never heard of before, probably because it was discontinued well before I entered college. This was a federally funded program, so all our taxes paid for this one, sent selected prisoners to colleges to complete their sentences, under the belief that if we just told them that rape was bad, they would stop raping. Heard that before. Not everybody was on board with this one. I mean, shockingly enough, the local law enforcement advised against this. The police chief in question, I'm pretty sure it had to have been in San Jose because this is where this was piloted. He pointed out that stalking and rapes were actually up on the campus where the convicts were enrolled, reported, quote, "When I complained, the project director said the clients were screened and that California had declared it an exemplary program. Actually, we later found out the program screened applicants only on a basis of academic scores. They didn't screen them for what crimes they had committed to be put in prison. Interesting, right? Continuing the quote, federal rules prevented consideration of their criminal records. So the feds said, oh no, you can't even consider what they were arrested for. Just, if their academics allow them to go to college, you got to let them into college. Continuing the quote. California had declared the program exemplary only because it submitted quarterly reports on time. It's very bureaucratic. When my complaints about the program became public, I was censured by the students and faculty and advised by my superiors in City Hall to go easy. After all, this was an exemplary, federally funded program to reduce recidivism. End quote. The stalking and rapes continued at San Jose State University campus, and it wasn't until a few months later when the police, quote, arrested an honor student in the program for brutally torturing, raping, and murdering 2 women near the university that the program was ended. And yet, for some reason, because the murderer was, quote, articulate, and the project had often used him to show how wonderful it is that bright people could get a college education instead of languishing in prison, end quote, this is still seen as a successful program by the Anointed. Fuck the girls whose lives were shattered and who lost their lives because of this program, right? They're totally not at all relevant. Sounds like other current programs, current events having to do with self-identity. Just gonna call it there. I'm sure y'all know what I'm talking about. He includes a breakdown of fun with numbers, aka statistics, explaining how the Anointed twist numbers to tell a story that they want to tell. This was particularly interesting. Well, again, this book was written in 1995, right? As this world-renowned economist breaks down how the Anointed forced banks to reconfigure how they determine mortgage risk, you can literally read how the groundwork was laid for the 2008 housing collapse. So 13 years later, and this was thoroughly predictable. If you read this book back in 1995, you'd have gone, oh shit. And you might have, been one of the ones to short the housing market at the right time and joined the other, people who were made billionaires out of that one. Just watch, it was The Big Short. Yeah, I read that one too. The book is actually the movie is imminently watchable. So you can watch the movie if you don't want to read the book. But yeah, you could see it happening. You could literally read it and go, that's how that shit happened. Got it. One of the most telling statistics he covers, as if the housing class preview wasn't enough, and this one just, it's popped out of me because of all the books I read last month on farming, right? The statistics on hunger in America, all right? One of the hunger activists during the Hunger in America campaign determined how many people were hungry by, quote, determining how many were eligible for food stamps and then subtracting those who in fact receive food stamps. Now that seems like simple enough math, right? Add and subtract, multiply, divide, the 4 basics. Can't get much more basic than that. Only of the 150 hungriest counties in America that this statistician included, most of them were farming counties. The income of the farmers technically qualified them for food stamps, only they had no need to get the food stamps because they were literally growing their own food. And yet the activist just said, oh, they're hungry because they didn't actually get the food stamps that they were entitled to. Suppose they could have gotten the food stamps and then sold them, but that's technically illegal. Instead, they just grew their own food, which was way more practical for, farmers. And a more honest way would have been to remove the farm communities from those statistics and then reconfigure the numbers. But that would have told a very different story. One that went against the message. And no matter how much evidence you throw up to the contrary, the Anointed play verbal games to explain why they're right and you're ignorant. In their eyes, at least. Sowell calls them Teflon prophets, citing specifically John Kenneth Galbraith, Paul Ehrlich, and Ralph Nader as specific prophets who have made their prophecies. The prophecies were abject failures, not a single thing about them proved right, and yet they remain beloved. We could, in these ladders, again, 1995, so after this book came out, you could easily add Al Gore, Anthony Fauci, Greta Thunberg to that list. Not a single thing they have predicted has come true, and yet people still love them. Still quote them as harbingers of knowledge and wisdom who can do no wrong. But it's really fun when he points out the fictitious history, like the legacy of slavery. Again, Thomas Sowell, all right, when he puts legacy of slavery in quotes, you know his takedown's going to be good. Sowell walks us through the verbal sleight of hand the Anointed like to use and the specific vocabulary they use and how they use it, which is very relevant. It's not just that they twist the meaning of capitalism so that even people who directly profit and survive off of capitalism, like, for example, certain recently famous authors who just pen deals for shows off of their work, but decry capitalism as a basis of living. But as Sowell points out, quote, despite the name, capitalism is not an ism. It is not a philosophy, but an economy. Ultimately, it is nothing more and nothing less than an economy not run by political authorities, end quote. Put in my own words, because I once had somebody like talking about how, wouldn't it be nice if I could just live somewhere and do X, Y, Z and get fed for it? And I'm like, that's called capitalism. At its most basic, in my own words, capitalism is nothing more than the exchange of goods for services. Now, the most common good has been cash for literally thousands of years. Like whatever a people has decided is valuable, that's the cash. A lot of time it's coin because that's easier to move than bolts of fabric. But really, that's all it is, the exchange of goods for services. As most fundamental, that's all capitalism is, the exchange of goods for services. I do want to shout out, because this was a very timely tweet that popped up on my feed the other day. One of my favorite YouTube historians who threw out this just fantastically sarcastic tweet in defense of capitalism the other day. If you've never heard of the Fat Electrician, you don't know what you're missing. And also, how have you not heard of him? He is infinitely more famous than I am. My 606 followers. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. The biggest problem is that the Anointed think in terms of solutions. Only there are no solutions. There's only trade-offs, a fact which they conveniently sweep under the rug when discussing the fallout from any of their good-for-you schemes. But let's just take it back to the beginning, since pandemics are being bandied about again with the recent outbreak of hantavirus on a cruise ship, causing panic among the mindless masses of the Anointed. Not a single one of the solutions offered by the Anointed 6 years ago worked. Not a single one. And yet the same people who openly decry Walmart and Amazon as symbols of all that is wrong with capitalism, see my above statements on capitalism, failed to grasp that it was government overreach, government solutions to the pandemic that led to the direct and permanent closure of hundreds of thousands of small businesses. The only place that you could shop that wasn't Walmart or Amazon. Didn't survive. Closed permanently. Because the government said you can't go there, you might get sick. Maybe. There are no solutions in life, only trade-offs. And the reality is, the only way a pandemic ends is to write it out. You just got to write it out. Death comes for us all at its own time. Rather than acknowledging that, the government pandered solutions that were no solutions at all, and specifically designed to remove critical thought across the board, which is exactly what the Anointed want. But I dare say this is why the Anointed are so very anti-free speech and very pro let the government regulate the internet. As Sowell says in his closing chapter, quote, our exploration of the vision of the Anointed will begin with its greatest achievement and its greatest danger, which are one and the same. The vision has become self-contained and self-justifying, which is to say, independent of empirical evidence. That is what makes it dangerous. Not because a particular set of policies may be flawed or counterproductive, but because insulation from evidence virtually guarantees a never-ending supply of policies and practices fatally independent of reality. This self-contained and self-justifying vision has become a badge of honor and a proclamation of identity. To affirm it is to become one of us. To oppose it is to be one of them. End quote. I love this book. I've also been a long-time admirer of Sowell, of how he handles himself in confrontation. He always maintains a calm demeanor. There's YouTube footage out there of him directly confronting then Senator Joe Biden about some of the policies Biden was pushing forward. He always maintains a calm demeanor while politely yet firmly issuing a verbal smackdown. But if you want to know more about the inner machinations of the Anointed, I highly recommend this book, The Vision of the Anointed. And that is it for this week. If you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye.